Hello and salaam alaikum everyone. Um, if you had joined me in this video, the part one of this video, which deals with the Adam story, this is part two. And if you haven't had a chance to see part one, please do. I'm just going to jump right into part two without much explanation of what went before it. So if you haven't had a chance, please check out part one, and maybe you can come back and enjoy this segment of the story. So where we left off essentially was the last verse where we talked about how Iblis or Shaitan said, hey, listen, because you put me in the wrong, I will mislead man in this way. He will lie on the path to mislead them. He'll approach them from before them, behind them, the side of them, left and right. And essentially as an assault to misguide man. But saying that there are two things that essentially that prevents him from doing, from being successful. And one of them, of course, is except for those servants of God that are grateful, and except for those servants of God who are sincere. But immediately after he tells this, he makes this proclamation to God. God says to him, well, get out of here, despised and expelled. Whoever among them follows you, I will fill up hell with you all. So this is a very harsh response by God. He says, well, whoever follows you, I will basically put you in the hellfire. I mean, that's the only response appropriate for you, essentially, and for those who follow you. And we will talk a little bit more about that response later on in other videos when we talk about evil, sin, and the reward or punishment for that. Because there's a lot of people that have a lot of inhibitions or apprehensions when it comes to the notion of hell as a just punishment for earthly wrongdoings. In any event, God turns to Adam and he says to Adam, "Oh, Adam, he says, oh, Adam, inhabit the garden, you and your wife, and eat whatever you wish, but do not approach this tree lest you become sinners or wrongdoers." Wrongdoers meaning al-zalimin. Excuse me. Now, al-zalimin is an Arabic word that actually comes from dhulm, right? And it's actually a word that we find in Al-Mizan. And Al-Mizan, of course, is one of the great volumes of Quran exegesis, essentially Quranic commentary, one of the great works. And what Allama Tabatabai talks about, who is the author of Al-Mizan, he says that, look, this word, al-zalamin, has a root word. It comes from another word, and the word it comes from is defined as dhulm. And what it means is it's any act, right, of oppression or wrongdoing whereby a person either deprives others of their rights and does not fulfill his obligations towards them. Okay? And because they don't fulfill that person's right or obligations that they have upon them, they have committed an act of dhulm or self-oppression. Now, going back to the verse, right? So God says to Adam, well, hey, Adam, you and Eve, you can inhabit the garden however you like. You can eat whatever you wish, but don't approach this tree lest you become sinners or wrongdoers, lest you become them. Right? So essentially, lest you commit this self-oppression and basically void yourself of this obligation that you have towards me, okay? This right you have to fulfill towards me. And we will come back a little bit to that in just a moment. All right. Furthermore, God says to Adam, he says, "Oh, Adam, this Shaitan is your enemy and the enemy of your spouse, Eve. Let him not expel you and your spouse from paradise, lest you be plunged into misery." What's interesting here is that in Shia Islamic tradition, the orthodox narrative is that hey, listen, that God was actually advising Adam, not commanding him. In other words, they say that this speech of God telling Adam not to to not to eat from this tree was really an advisory command. But it really doesn't hold water, or it really doesn't address other issues that arise from this very verse, in which God is saying, one, that this creature is your enemy, so don't even listen to him. That's one. And two, that he actually says, don't let him expel you out of the garden. He's telling Adam, not only don't eat from this tree or even go near it, he says, don't let him get you out. Okay, it couldn't be more clearer than that. Okay, now we understand in Shia traditions where it is said that, yes, the hadiths say that man or humankind was meant for the earth. Yet we see here in the Quran where God is saying, look, don't let him get you out. So how do we then reconcile these two realities, in which we see the Prophet in the traditions admitting that, yes, Adam was meant for the earth. Human beings were meant for the earth. And of course, I don't disagree with that. But here we see the Quran saying, well, don't let him get you out. So we have to ask the question, well, what is really happening here? It's not that these two things are wrong, but how we understand them needs to change. And so what we really need to realize here is God actually doesn't intend for Adam to come to the earth by way of force, okay? Because he wants to try Adam and Eve to see what they will do. And of course, in his wisdom, he knows that, yeah, they are going to mess up. And in this way, he intends for them to come to earth when they do mess up. But he doesn't intend to put them in a position of lesser than paradise, right? He gives them the best. He starts them off in the best way. He gives them the paradise. He gives them everything. And not only that does he give them everything, but he also gives them the truth. And what's that? He tells them, hey, listen, this creature, he doesn't hide anything from them. He tells them, this creature is your enemy. And moreover, he intends to expel you out of the garden. So do not let him do it. Okay? And this is very interesting because in spite of the truth, right? In spite of being given the best, and in spite of everything, right? We see what eventually happens to Adam and Eve. And this is a very important aspect of the story, of which I will talk a little bit more as we continue. So God is very upfront. He says, well, don't let him expel you and your spouse from paradise. So this is very clear, right? So for those people who say that God was advising Adam and Eve that they could eat from the tree or they could not eat from the tree, this doesn't hold water, because this part of the verse is very clear. It says, look, do not let him expel you out of the garden, okay? And furthermore, When Adam is being told this, God follows it up by saying, not only should you not let him get you out of the garden, but if you do, right, you will be in misery. So God says, let him not expel you and your spouse from paradise, lest you be plunged in misery. Okay? Fatashak, which means lest you fall into a state of suffering. But the Quran says that the shaitan whispered to them to reveal to them their nakedness, right? Which was invisible to them up until that point, right? So I mean, this verse is very clear. I mean, he says, the Quran says, well, even after we told them this, the shaitan whispered to them and caused, right, them to be, caused their nakedness to be exposed. Now, it's interesting, this word nakedness, because it's an Arabic word that is sawatihima, okay? And it means nakedness. And it comes, the plural of this word is sawahis, okay? And it comes from the word sawa. And sawa means a body part that would disgrace or distress the person if it were to be revealed or exposed, okay? So essentially what the verse is saying is that the shaitan or Iblis, he caused where before this part of their nakedness was not visible. The Quran says it wasn't visible, right? But he whispered to them to reveal their nakedness, okay? Which was invisible up until this point. And this nakedness, or the revelation of this nakedness, according to the word, is really illustrating that this nakedness is a one that makes one feel uncomfortable. And this puts one in a state of distress, exposed, vulnerable, so to speak. Now he said, God says, your Lord has only forbidden you this tree lest you become, Shaitan says, or the devil says to Adam, he says, well, Adam, your Lord has only forbidden you this tree lest you become angels or such beings as live forever. And the Quran says, and he swore to them, I am a sincere advisor to you. Now, so the Quran goes on to reveal what really happens in how he's able to cause their nakedness to come about. And he tells them, hey, listen, this tree that your Lord has forbidden you from is really, the only reason why he has actually forbidden you this is because, if you were to eat from this tree, you would become such beings such as angels or beings that would live forever. Now, in the Islamic in the Islamic hadith, they say that this ability of his success to get them to eat from the tree was actually not something that happened overnight. And in fact, the hadith say it took about 40 years before this happened. Now, whether that's for the 40 human years or 40 heavenly years or whatever that really means, essentially it didn't happen overnight. It took a long time. And some Islamic commentators say that it was a very gradual thing, right? He came, and maybe one day he would say one thing and he would leave it like that. But essentially we can almost imagine that he must have tried within that 40 years so many things. And at some point he must have realized that Adam and Eve wanted to remain in paradise forever. Right? The story gives this impression that this must have been something that he came to realize in Adam and Eve, that they were superbly content with the spiritual blessings that they had received. You know, they were very happy with each other, right? They were very happy with their surroundings. They had everything at their fingertips. And they probably wanted this to last. And so when he probably at some point realized this. And so he says to them, yeah, well, you know, the only real reason, you know, is because of, you know, you would live forever or become like angels. And so this became his selling point, and this became the taste of his seduction, right? And moreover, he even swore that he was sincere. Now, this is interesting because what it tells us is that God is making the point, like, and you know, moreover, this guy even swore that he was sincere. You know, this is essentially what's happening here with this verse when God says that. And it's interesting to note that, because what that really means is that it speaks to the naivety of Adam and Eve, or the lack of experience of Adam and Eve with someone who would say or do something and then lie about it, right? They weren't familiar with what it means to lie. And this was the first time that they actually encountered what it means to lie, right? So they were probably like, well, you know, like, okay, well, God said, you know, we shouldn't eat from this tree, but here it is that this guy, you know, he's saying that, you know, so no, they're tempted by this idea of living forever in this place that's beautiful, that they have lived for many years, and they would love to live for an eternity. Okay. And here it is, this, that, and maybe even that they knew that they were not meant to live forever, right? Maybe there was this possibility, this knowledge in their, this awareness that, yeah, they would die at some point, right? Their aspect of the story that can be interpreted, that they were aware that they may not live forever, right? For instance, when he says, well, give me, when the devil says to God, well, give me respite until the day they are raised, there is some indication that perhaps God may not have created Adam and Eve even within this paradisical world to live forever. And maybe they were aware of this. So the devil probably realized, hey, you know, maybe I can use that to my advantage. And certainly he did that. So now here it is, Adam and Eve, they are now, okay, we're not going to live forever in this environment. Maybe he's onto something here. Maybe there's something behind why God does not want us to eat from this tree. And on top of that, he swears, oh, well, he's sincere. He's swearing his sincerity to us. And of course, this really shows the inexperience of Adam and Eve. They were not experienced with someone who would lie, right? And in fact, we see how it was the very, very opposite in the case with God. When God was dealing with them, he was very straightforward. From the get-go, he told them, he says, hey, listen, you know, you can eat from this, from wherever you want. You can live here wherever you want, for however long you want. You have everything you need. The only thing you don't do. And then on top of that, he tells them, hey, listen, there is this creature. He is an enemy. And he tells them that all he wants is to expel you out of the garden. All this stuff he downloads on them. You would think that if God really didn't want Adam and Eve to come to earth, why is he telling them all this stuff about this creature that eventually gets them to the earth? Well, it's because God is honest. And God doesn't lie to his creatures, right? Simply put. And that perhaps also it's not about the truth in and of itself alone. There's more to the story than just knowing, Adam knowing the truth. And really, this is Adam and Eve's first trial or test from God to see the level of Adam's capacity to obey God. And we will see later on how this is confirmed. So the Quran says, thus did he brought about their fall by deception. And when they tasted of the tree, their nakedness became evident to them, and they began to covering themselves with the leaves of the garden. And their Lord called out to them, did I not forbid you from this tree and say to you that Shaitan is a sworn enemy unto you? So we understand what the nakedness means, right? He exposed something that was not exposed to them before. And it was the direct cause of causing them to eat from this tree. And we know it was something negative because immediately the verse says that they began to cover themselves with the leaves of the garden. And as though they were trying to hide this new state of distress, right? This state of vulnerability, this state of feeling exposed. And essentially a state of shame. So God turned to them and said, didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you both not to eat from this tree? And moreover, did I not tell you that Shaitan is a sworn enemy to you? So God comes back and reiterates, right, this command that he's saying, did I not tell you? Did I not tell you? Right? As if he's saying, this was not an advisory command. I'm telling you, this is what he's up to doing. And did I not tell you about this? You know, it's like when you have like your son or your daughter or your child, and they do something, you told them everything. You told them, you gave them the whole lowdown on what would happen if they went ahead and do all that. And nonetheless, being as stubborn or being human, almost, I would have to say, just being human. This is a human trait, right? That you can tell them everything. You can give them the whole truth. You can reveal to them everything. And they would still persist in doing what it is that they want to do. And that is the human quality that the angels were talking about. When God said to Adam, "Oh Adam, he said to the angel, says, I am about to create this creature as my vicegerent." And he said, well, Allah, why are you going to create this creature when, we don't make any mistakes. We praise you and we worship you, and we should be the ones to represent you on earth. But God says, well, I know what you don't know. So let's dive into this a bit, because this is really an important part of the verse, because what this part of the verse shows us is that in spite of everything that God told Adam and Eve, okay, they still fell, and God knew that they wouldn't. And the reason why he knew that they would is because of their human nature, this part of themselves that wants more. Okay? So we have a setting where God has said to them, hey, this is very paradisical. You can eat and sleep in comfort. You can have everything you want. But there was one thing that they wanted that they couldn't have, that the shaitan or the devil tempted them with. And that was the human nature that gets us in trouble. That desire for more. And that is the driving force behind all human sin or all human misconduct. And we go back now to the 2 verses that I talked to you guys about, in which God which the devil was saying to God by way of getting his revenge. And he says, I will mislead them except for those who are grateful. And I will mislead those except for those who are sincere. And this human desire that Adam and Eve had was tempted by the desire for eternal life. Okay? It was tempted by the desire to have or to acquire this paradise forever. Okay? They were perhaps afraid that, you know what, they would one day lose this beautiful environment, this state of being that they had. Coupled with the fact that they were naive. They didn't know what it was, what it meant to be deceived. They probably didn't even know what it meant to have an enemy. They never had an enemy. They don't know what that is. So coupled with these things, it caused their fall. And so my contention is we don't need to make up an excuse for why we don't need to make up an excuse that that Adam was perfect and he was infallible and he could not have slipped. He could not have ended up in a situation where he disobeyed God. We don't need to make up that excuse. We already know that man is infallible. It's the first thing that the angels said when they said to God, "Well, are you going to create this creature that's going to, cause corruption in the earth and shed blood?" God said, "Well, I know something that you don't know." I mean, we'll talk about what that "I know something you don't know" is, and why God takes this position of confidence in man. But here we see that this human creature that he just had so much confidence in, and he demonstrated his position, goes and does something like this. It's like, wow, where you almost want to say, Adam, where's your gratitude? How can you almost prove God wrong in front of the angels, so to speak? Wrong, so to speak, in front of the angels. But we know that this is not the case. And of course, as I continue in a lot of the stories, I will eventually get into why that's not the case. But I don't want to talk too much about that here and now. So when God said that to them, hey, look, did I not tell you that you shouldn't approach this tree, and that moreover, this is an enemy to you, right? And that he intends on expelling you from the garden. They said, "Oh, our Lord, we have wronged ourselves. Unless you forgive us and have mercy on us, we will be among the losers." So Adam and Eve felt a degree of remorse, and they turned to God in repentance. God said, "We said to them, get down from it, all of you," meaning Adam, Eve, and Iblis, Shaitan. "Yet whenever comes guidance from me, then whoever follows my guidance, they have nothing to fear, nor shall they grieve." And this is very interesting. I'll comment more on that as I proceed a little bit on into some of the verses here. Then God says, "Then learned Adam from his Lord words of inspiration. Then his Lord chose him, so he turned to him and guided him, for he is oft returning, most merciful." So God says that when they fell, he came to them and said, "Hey, man, didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you that this guy is an enemy of yours? And moreover, I told you not to let him do this to you, and moreover, he's an enemy of yours. And of course, Adam and Eve turned to God, asking for forgiveness. And of course, God says, well, we turn to them. And one of the things that, in spite of turning to them, God says, well, you know what? In spite of my forgiving you, get out of this place. This is no longer a place for you. And it included not only Adam and Eve, but for the devil as well. Says, get out from here. And then God turned to Adam and he says to Adam, whenever guidance comes from me, then whoever follows this guidance, they have nothing to fear, nor shall they grieve. And he says that he had chosen Adam after all this to receive his guidance and to be, and of course, if you're Muslim and you're watching this, you know that Adam is, of course, the first prophet of humanity, and because God had chosen him to receive his guidance and to guide the first human beings that were then with him, i.e. his family. But then God says something very interesting. He says, we had already beforehand taken the covenant of Adam, right? But he forgot this covenant, and we found on his part no firm resolve and determination. So this is the last commentary God makes about Adam with respect to what happened in this paradise, that eventually they were thrown out of. He says, we had made a vow, or we had made a covenant with Adam. And of course, the covenant was that Adam would obey God and hold firm to the way. And God says, well, Adam forgot this covenant, right? He forgot. And we found on his part no firm resolve or determination. And this idea of not having a firm resolve or determination is actually linked in other parts of the Quran where God talks about patience. And in fact, in a Shia tradition, we hear, well, first of all, we hear in the Quran, God says, I love those who are patient, right? But in the Shia tradition, in the Hadiths, we hear that Imam Ali, who is, according to Shias, the successor of the Prophet and one of the infallible Imams, 12 of them, 12 being the case, and he being the first of the 12. And he says something quite interesting. He says that patience is to faith or to religion what the neck is to the body, in that without patience, you can't have faith, or you